Go ahead, call the meeting to order. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom? Here. Ms. Lehman?
Here.
Ms. Lewis?
Here.
Mr. Nally?
Here.
Mr. Price?
Here. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from our regular meeting held October 21st, 2024, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Lewis. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom? Yes. Ms. Lehman?
Yes.
Mr. Nally?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes, motion's approved. Moving on to legislative report.
Knowing that the legislature right now is in their lame duck session, they're trying to move through with a lot of different items. Some of the key right now, they're talking about, these are just some highlight of some of the things that are being forwarded. Transparency and Pledge of Allegiance is one of the items. Adopt a policy preventing the district from purchasing lab-grown meat and eggs.
That just sounds bad.
So interesting. There's a proposal about revising the calculation of school districts' effective millage floor. Not that it's already, very difficult to understand and follow. And then they're talking about a proposal to implement the wearable panic alert system buttons. And, I sent to all of the board members and Superintendent Hurt to this information that I'm going over. I sent it out to the board, and if anybody wants to look at a copy, there'll be one at the administrative office. There's also a lot of information that the Department of Education and Workforce are proposing in terms of rules that are open for public comment, and there's 2 sheets of those. So please look those over, and if there's something you feel strongly about, you can go on to the OSBA site and to the legislative area and find move forward on that and express yourself. The other quick thing was regarding the voucher system. Just interesting. There's right now several states have started pulling back on their choice, kind of ed choice programs with the vouchers. Nebraska, Kentucky, Colorado, Kentucky and Colorado had initiatives on the ballot statewide, and their citizenry did not support funding the private dollars going to private entities, and largely because of how it affects our public schools. And just to give you an example, in 2023, the state of Ohio paid out $610 million for the voucher program, and in 2024 it's $962 million. So we're almost at that $1 billion mark. And as we've talked before, where those dollars, right now they're saying that they're separate pots, but eventually, how will those pots fund our public education? So that's all I had.
Thank you. No walk-on items tonight?
No.
Hearing of the public. I don't think we have anyone here to address the board, so we'll move on to superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Good evening, Mr. Price, board members. November is a time for all of us to recognize and honor our veterans. At this time, I would like to invite Mrs. Susan King to come forward so that we, as a district, can honor those among us who have actively served their country.
Good evening. It brings me great pleasure to do this. Being a former, my husband was in the military, and being a spouse of the military and living that lifestyle. I know the sacrifices that our service people make. And so I am very proud tonight to go through the name of staff members who have also served. We have a few of them that are here, and some of them had other plans for tonight, but we'd like to recognize everyone, if that's okay, and have those that are here come forward. When you hear your name called, please come forward and you'll receive your certificate up front. Michael Binder, Russell Brennan, Aloysius Fabro, Marvin Hunt, Edward Kennedy, William Meismer, Jeff McNutt, oh, sorry.
All right.
Jeremy Mick, Sophia Ratliff, Ralph Swaysgood, and Judy Wiggins. We have service members that are serving in all capacities in our district, and we're very thankful for their service and for our veterans. So this concludes what I have, and in just a few minutes, we're going to go out and grab a picture or two. So if you don't mind following me out there, and then you are more than welcome to come back in for the rest of the meeting or leave at that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs.
Thank you.
King.
Thank
Thank you
you.
to all of our
Thank you.
veterans. All right, so this evening, we will be reviewing our second core component of our current strategic plan. A reminder to our community that are joining us that we are in the final year of our current strategic plan. And at this time, that second core component, Abby, if you'll flip one more for me, there we go, is that we will support and develop our staff. We provide growth opportunities to improve professional practices and support staff in order to positively impact student outcomes. We have 3 action steps that fall underneath that strategic objective: to build a culture of connection and well-being through meaningful staff development, to develop a preschool through grade 12 literacy focus incorporating previous initiatives, and continue providing a level of individual selection of professional development. So to take a quick look at those action steps, we know that building the culture and being very meaningful in all of our buildings and all of our educational opportunities within the district is very important. And we know that we need to engage our staff. We are very thoughtful from the district perspective to make sure that we are engaging all of our staff. When we have a professional development day that you're going to hear a little bit about coming up, please know that we have offerings and availability and things planned for all of our staff, our certified teaching staff, our administrative staff, our bus drivers, our child nutrition staff, our administrative assistants and secretaries. So no matter what your role is in Fremont City Schools, we try to have something planned and ready for all of those individuals. Number 3 for us was helping our staff, allowing our staff to have some choice in those professional development opportunities. And you're going to hear a little bit more about that as well. Number 2 really dug us into looking at that literacy focus across the district. Every single grade level, we know that reading, writing, speaking, and listening are an incredibly important component of being a successful adult. So we wanted to make sure that we're looking at all of those aspects. At the time that we wrote the strategic objective, we already had some things happening in our buildings. And that's that previous initiative that we wanted to be able to acknowledge what we had and build on it. We didn't want to come in and start a 3-year program and throw everything out and start everything over new. We really wanted to acknowledge what we had and build and go forward from there. So that's just a little bit of that big component of what we look at with staff. Tonight, we will hear from Mrs. Abby Abernathy, our Assistant Superintendent, and Mrs. Christina French, Principal at Krogan Elementary, who join us. They will capture for us some key examples of ways that we as a district have supported and continue to support and develop our staff.
Thank you. So we're going to start first at the building level. And Mrs. French is going to go over something that she's working to develop in her own building called PBIS, which is Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. And it's a 3-tier system for students when we're thinking about teaching expected behaviors and what we expect within our classrooms. Each building, which I know Mrs. French will go over in a little bit, they will analyze data and look at different spots in the building to help improve student behavior.
So at Krogan, we had a PBIS Tier 1 committee, and this year we started off with the help of Vanessa Moya, a behavior specialist. We completed a PBIS tiered fidelity inventory, and from that, we determined that we were implementing the Tier 1 about 46%, and our Tier 3 is 32%, but we were missing our Tier 2 students, and it kind of ties right back into the mission of that Mrs. Hurt had just went over. Because for our students to be able to perform in school, they need to behave. So we're missing that component of helping our Tier 2 students who are missing those behavioral skills. So from there, we decided we needed a Tier 2 committee. So based on that information, we have developed a Tier 2 committee. And from there, we have 7 team members, and 3 of us were able to attend a Tier 2 training in Bowling Green last year. And our goal now is to be able to take what we learned from there and create a Tier 2 intervention skills library, because we found that students, just like if they come in and they can't read, we're going to teach them. Well, we have many students who are missing behavioral skills. So we're trying to come up with a curriculum to help them with that intervention. And we already have the time worked into our schedule during that no new instruction time that we can pull students and work on behavior with them. Our goal is to provide targeted intervention for Tier 2 students.
Okay. So then on a larger scale, then my department now assists, well, my new department. We continued on where Mrs. Hurt had left off about supporting each of our different buildings with their goals. So that's something that Mrs. French and I have been working on, is, some of her PBIS strategies and curriculums and such. Whole scale, though, for the whole district, we have various offerings every professional development day. We have 4 PD days per year. Our first one, we usually hit up our public school works programming pretty hard, which I know are probably some things that you guys get, like ethics training. My favorite's the fire extinguisher. That's pretty awesome to know those. Child abuse, bullying, suicide prevention. There's some pretty serious topics in there as well. Slips, trips, and falls, safety of the building. But what I've noticed over the last probably 10 years is that we're really hitting up student mental health as well within our required trainings, like you see up there. The suicide prevention, the bullying, ethics is on there as well. That's a new one this year. Mrs. King does a great job communicating with Public School Works, which is our online training for that. And staff, they do a pretty great job too, keeping up with that. They're sometimes can be tedious at the beginning of the year, but they do a good job keeping up. A few years ago then, 7 or 8 years ago, I think now, we implemented a menu. So every PD day we'll have a menu of different options that teachers can choose from, their own professional choices that day, right? They're all professionals. And sometimes those topics could include, CPI training, which is an in-person training. It could include some Ohio State testing data analysis. Artificial intelligence is something that we're probably behind learning about, but it's so far ahead of us. So we got some training with that. Something else we've hit pretty hard the last couple of years is mental health, not just for our students, but for our staff members too. Sometimes at work, there's some traumatic events or a loss of a student or a colleague and, handling some, pretty serious situations. You'll see CPI is up there. That's crisis prevention intervention, and that is a de-escalation training. There are 9 steps to de-escalation prior to using a restraint for a student. We only use restraints for students when it's a safety concern. We've had very few of those incidences. We have to document them each time. So our teachers do a really nice job with that. Phonics instruction as well, that's always on there. We use the Phonics First programming, and we're going to continue to do different trainings for that too. So into the future, what we're looking at doing is, I should have backed up a little bit. Sorry. Every PD day, our principals will collect feedback from their staff and they share it with me. And one thing that I'm really seeing is they want in-person training. A couple years ago, they really wanted online trainings, kind of maybe keep separate a little bit. But I think just like the rest of us, sometimes when you're at your desk working, you can get distracted easily. And I think they're missing that camaraderie of having conversations with people as they go through new training. So that's been something we've gotten feedback every time on. So we're trying to increase that as we go. And some of that is we are going to be coming to you probably sometime this winter for our new K-5 ELA curriculum. So our curriculum committee consists of about 30 people. Billy Pickerel, Julie Lockyer have just been nothing short of amazing when it comes to this. We've narrowed it down. We're down just to a few left, and we're trying to find what's best for our students. Also, we have our reading improvement plans that went up to 3rd grade. Now they're going past 3rd grade, so we're doing a lot of trainings for that. There's some new requirements with high dosage tutoring, which is still kind of in its infancy stage here in Ohio. Science of Reading is a big program that people have heard. Mrs. Hurt did a great job securing grant dollars that we were able to pay our staff to do that on their own time. We're in the high 90% range of being finished already. It's required by this summer. And just kudos to her in that department for that, because there are many districts in our area that have like 10% done, and we're in the high 90s. And everyone, administration to teachers, have to be trained. And it's time consuming. And so yeah, we had many timesheets filled out, and which is a good thing. Mm-hmm. Also, we're hearing they would like some content-specific opportunities. Our wellness and fine arts departments are doing a nice job, collecting feedback from them. And then also they're looking for opportunities as well. They're not waiting for us to, which I completely commend. We have safety training. We just sent a group of Ross safety team last Friday to some trainings. And also we're working on EL strategy. So that's for our English learners. Our numbers have increased, and we're past only having students who speak maybe 1 or 2 languages, meaning like we had Spanish and Chinese and Japanese, and now we're seeing, Haitian Creole, French Creole. We're seeing a great deal. We're also seeing some Spanish dialects, like right from the Mayan Indians, which I think is amazing.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
The cultural aspect of that is so interesting.
Yeah, right from the Mayan civilization. It's pretty neat, their dialect. So it's a little bit different. And so when some of our Spanish-speaking paras speak with them, it takes just a little bit longer to translate that. So, but we're working on strategies for our students within the classrooms as well, so we can grow them academically. Any questions?
I had one for Mrs. French.
Sure.
Can you give an example of the types of, when you're talking about behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
what's the range of those types of behaviors that you're talking about?
Tier 1 behavior is typically 80% of your students respond to like walk in the hallway and they stop and walk. Our tier 2 behaviors are about 10%, and it's the ones who they're getting in trouble for the same thing over and over, even with interventions. So they actually need some more like one-on-one instruction or small group instruction just to help them learn the skills that they're lagging. So.
Okay.
And then our tier 3 is usually about 3% of the population. But our intervention specialists, Vanessa Moya, and Bridget Smith, they both step right in and help with tier 3 because those are our students who are in crisis and like we need to help them now. But we're just trying to figure out a way to help those tier 2 students who are continually getting in trouble and the classroom management system's not helping them, and is to help the teachers also.
And again, and define trouble.
Like for the tier 2, like refusing every day to complete work. It's to try to avoid those students who are constantly having to stay in and miss half their recess to make up work. Like, what is keeping them from doing their work, and what can we teach them to help them be able to complete the work in class?
Okay. That helps.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I always think with PBIS too, it's teaching kids what we expect from them. And if we don't teach them, then they're not quite sure how to handle a new situation with a lot of people around.
Right.
I see that in my own children sometimes of, that's not what I expected while we were here. This is the behavior that we expect. And, maybe at a restaurant or in a store, same thing at school.
And I look at it like all of our students come in at different academic levels. So they're all coming in with different behavioral levels. So what can we do to support the ones who are missing those skills? So,
Right.
And that's what we're trying to narrow down at Krogan, is looking at data, like where's a problem area? What can we do to fix it? So,
Yeah. And I guess where I was going with that was just more one for us, but also the public that's watching,
mhm.
that they're understanding that you guys are doing more than the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, that, that you are looking at, helping those children grow in other ways.
Correct.
Whole child.
Yes.
Whole child.
Absolutely.
So how do we and I don't know if this is a component of that or not, but how do we bring parents and families into that equation?
Well, and that was part of when we did the fidelity report, is that you're supposed to have parents in too. And that's an area that we're trying to improve on, is having them involved in that process. The other part is just helping them to be aware of, like, this is what we're working on with your child too. So, and this is what we're seeing at school, and just that open communication, like let them know if the behaviors are continuing. So,
And I think that helps to establish that we try to do things at school, and then if the environment at home doesn't shift, or likewise, I encourage parents to be teammates with teachers, and if they figure something out at home that works to correct a behavior, encourage them to talk to the teachers at school.
right, that team approach.
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely. Good.
Do you feel like you have enough volunteers and staff in there to help with everything?
For as far as like the PBIS committee. Yeah, my tier 1 committee, it's a teacher from every grade level, as well as myself and my assistant principal. We also have our school counselor, and then Vanessa Moya, the behavior specialist, is on there too. And then tier 2 is supposed to be smaller. So we got one teacher, and then again, the counselor, behavior specialist, principal, assistant principal. And then Erica Kujan Hunt joined us as an intervention specialist. She has a lot of background working in a transition unit, so it just was a nice flow, and she's providing us with like a lot of insight on how to help with behavior. So,
Great.
Right.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, thank you for everything you do. You can tell you both care. That's 100% of the reason why you're as head as you are. So, yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
yep, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies. I appreciate your information sharing this evening. Mr. Price, if you're okay, I'll continue.
Yep. Moving on to recommendations.
Wonderful. Our first item this evening is to consider the approval of donations. Once again, we have a very generous community that comes forward to support our students and our staff in our district.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve item 1, please?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Nally. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Nally.
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom. Yes. Ms. Lehman.
Yes.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you. Item number 2, please consider the approval of transportation for our volleyball team. This is an item that is in the rears. This took place in between our board meetings, our scheduled board meetings. This was the transportation to the regionals when our student athletes went there. So just so you know that this happened previously.
Can I get a motion to approve item 2, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Lehman. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion?
Why was this mode of transportation selected for the team?
The idea came from our athletic department as just a way to honor and recognize this group of students. This is the first time in program history that our volleyball team has made it out of districts and headed into that state pathway. This was a private donation that financially supported this.
All things that I think are very important for the public to know. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Okay, roll call, please.
Ms. Lehman.
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom. Yes. Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. Nally.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you. Item number 3 brings us to the approval of a contract with Sandusky County for the purpose of 1 school resource officer. This is our wonderful Deputy Eric Jordan, who primarily works with our elementary buildings and does a fantastic job on our team.
Can I get a motion to approve item 3, please?
So move.
Motion by Ms. Lewis. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nally. Any discussion?
You ever think a time will come where we'll need more than one? Or you think one's
We have a total of 3 for the district, and the beautiful aspect that we have in Fremont City Schools is the teamwork and camaraderie between all 3 of them. They really do play with each other very, very nicely. So it's a big plus.
so he primarily does the elementaries.
That is correct.
So do you think we'll ever need more than just one for the elementaries, or you think he's enough to handle all 4? Just wondering, just futuristically.
Yeah. I can only say at this time, Ms. Lehman, that I think that the 1 deputy SRO does a very nice job of covering all 4 buildings and meeting our needs.
All righty. He seems like a very nice guy. I got to meet him when I was touring the schools that one day. So.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. Nally.
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom. Yes. Ms. Lehman.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you. Item number 4 is the approval of the contract with the City of Fremont for 2 school resource officers. These 2 officers, new to us this year, is Ashley O'Connor and our Tony Olvera that responds here in this building. The 2 of them handle the North Street campus for us. And again, they are a great team throughout, and they all are in and out of all of our buildings as needed.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve item 4, please? Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lehman. Any discussion?
I like the sound of North Street campus. I've never heard that. We're so fancy. No, that is really neat. And I can attest that they definitely work well together from my end of the spectrum. So
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom. Yes. Ms. Lehman.
Yes.
Ms. Lewis.
yes.
Mr. Nally.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
All right. I will continue on. Beginning with item number 5, And moving through item number 26 are all policies that I bring you this evening as a first reading with you. All of these policies have been through our policy committee. Great discussion has taken place. The legalities behind the necessary changes or local changes that needed to be guided have all of those conversations have taken place. So I would ask your approval for the first reading for policies item number 5 through 26.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve items 5 through 26, please?
So move.
Motion by Mr. Nally. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Nally,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you. Moving on to our students section, item number 27, I would ask that you consider the approval to purchase some technology equipment from Dell Technologies. This will coordinate with our Project Lead the Way grant. We began this grant a couple of years ago. We started in grade 5. We went down to grade 4 and added grade 4 in. We have gone up and added grades 6, 7, and 8. So we now have a nice span utilizing Project Lead the Way, which is a STEM program that brings science, technology, engineering, math to our students. The projects at the grade levels are aligned to their learning standards and core content at that grade level. One of the allowances that is allowable in that grant is the use of devices that would be used for the lessons that would fall into this program. So that's what we are asking for this evening. And I would just like to give a shout out to our local partner. Our Project Lead the Way grant is connected with our local partner here in town that is RDAW. Many people don't know RDAW under that name, but if I say to you that was National Can, or I think originally in our community it was Stroh's, RDAW is now the current parent company for that. So we are thankful for those partners.
Can I get a motion to approve item 27, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nally. Any discussion?
Just, do we know how many devices?
I believe it is 4 carts and 32 a cart,
Okay.
because I believe it is 1 for each
How many is that?
grade
Meg?
level neighborhood
Again,
in
how
each
many
of the
is that?
buildings.
A lot.
So 120 devices.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Mr. Nally,
Yes.
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Beginning with our staff component at item 28, I would ask that you consider the approval of the following resignations, beginning with Tracy Dye and running through Sierra Asasi. And just a note before I move on to item 29, we have several longtime employees that are joining us here on this board agenda. I can say that I totaled up the years of service, and we are over, just on this page, 155 years of service to students and staff of Fremont City Schools. That is incredible for some of these individuals. We definitely begrudgingly asked you to approve their resignation, and we certainly wish them very, very well in their future endeavors. Item 29 will be ask you to consider the approval of the following appointments, and we have an administrative substitute as well as some certified substitutes. We have 2 appointments, Victoria Gamboa and Megan Sweeney. And we also have some support staff substitutes there as well. Item number 30, those are supplemental contracts I would ask you to approve, beginning with Angel Kreitz and running through Catherine Lewis. You will see there in the middle some of our classroom teachers that were approved, or you will approve hopefully for their fall music program. This is the elementary programs that took place last week at the PAC. This is a contractual dollar that is allowed for the teacher, the gen ed classroom teacher, that comes and supports and works with our wonderful music teachers as they prepare those students, and then the students perform that evening. So that's just a big plus, I think, all the way around for our staff to participate. Item 31, additional supplemental duties, beginning with Taylor Druckenmiller and running down to Sam Vengamia. Item 32, beginning with Tatum Dietrich through Krista Walker, and then again with Michelle Borges through Krista Walker. These are all staff that are willing to do some special event working outside of their regular day. Item 33, Abigail Hush would like to be a lifeguard with us. We greatly appreciate her skill set. Item 34, these are additional individuals for special event workers, beginning with Sarah Ellerbrock and down to Sarah Root. Item 35, we'd like to approve Gretchen Mies as she attends some additional meetings outside of the course of her day. Item 36 begins some status changes. Autumn Balmer has brought us some additional experience, and Allison and Shelley both are moving within our district. They've been employed with us, and they're seeking the next level of work within our district. So kudos to them for taking that on. And the last item there for Mary, just the fact that we would see her longevity, that she stays with us and continues to come and perform great service to our students. And that is all of that.
Ooh.
So thank you, Mr. Price.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve items 28 through 36, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Lewis. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion?
Quite the list.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom. Yes. Ms. Lehman,
Yeah.
Mr. Nally,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Wonderful. Thank you. Item 37. Mrs. King was working, pulling some information together, and she found that this was an opportunity that this week allowed us the opportunity for a proclamation to not only acknowledge the wonderful work that takes place in public education in Ohio, but to celebrate the wonderful work that takes place within our school system as well as other public school systems across the state. So I would ask that you consider approving the Ohio Public Education Appreciation Week proclamation.
Can I get a motion to approve item 37, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Nally. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lehman. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Nally,
Yes.
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom. Yes. Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you.
Moving on to report of the treasurer.
Good evening. It's all your favorite time of the year. It's the time I talk the most at a meeting. Well, the first time. It'll come again in May. But before we get into my lovely 5-year forecast and October financials and another item on the agenda, we did get a certificate from Ohio Schools Council this week. We got statements of savings. Through the Ohio School Council, we're allowed to participate in consortiums to purchase utilities such as electricity and natural gas. Through these programs for fiscal 23 and 24, we were able to save $649,000 over those 2 years, which is great for us. And then for our natural gas program from 2021 forward, we've saved a total of $213,000. So it's just a very good program for the district to be able to participate in to see those savings on our utilities. So I just thought I'd share that nice little thing. They dropped that off to us today.
That is real money.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost what, $900,000
Yeah.
almost
Oh, $1 million. Yeah.
in utility prices. That's
Yes. I cannot stress how great of a program that is
right.
for my October financials and 5-year forecast. Just a little too. I'm not going to spend too much time going over the 5-year, I am going to spend a lot of time going over the 5-year forecast, but the first item I'll have on the agenda tonight is the October financial report. I'll spend a little bit of time kind of go over a couple of things, but most of it will be on the 5-year forecast, which really kind of reflects what's happened up through now anyways, which would be our October financial report. So if everybody's okay, I'll move on to those items.
Okay.
With our October financials, I'm gonna flip my pages real quick. Just a couple of things I want to highlight. Our interest income, we are still seeing an uptick in that currently, but I believe we just had our second rate cut from the feds. And there's probably going to be a couple more coming down the pipe before the end of the year. So we aren't expecting too much more of an increase over the next rest of this year. We might still see some of an increase, but not the large increases that we had been seeing. Fringe benefits on our expenses. The thing I do want to talk about in this, we have a 6% increase in insurance this year, and the board chair is going to see that reflected largely in these benefits. So right now you only see a slight increase after we pay a month in advance. So the new rates will start December 1st. So in my December financials, we'll see more of an increase in that category. So I just kind of really wanted to highlight that. Overall,
So you said insurance-wise, we're only up 6%, which is that's great.
That's a very great.
Yeah.
I know I've talked to other districts and they're all seeing double digits. If any of you have had medical costs, everybody knows it's going up. Our district does a lot of work to keep those costs down, and that includes our employees. Our employees are very conscious when making certain decisions. I know a lot of people will call and say, hey, how do I find the tool to find where to get my blood work the cheapest? Yes, it benefits them, but it also benefits our plan as well. And there's also different savings that people participate in. Again, yes, it's a savings for the employee, but also a savings for the district. For those of you that don't know, insurance was my world for 5 years, so this is very near and dear to my heart. As much as I was glad to get away from it more, it's into Marina's lovely hands. But this fund, we've been able to be self-insured for, I believe, the last 15 years. I'm not quite sure how far back it goes, but it has been such a great program for us, and we've really been able to keep those insurance costs down. I don't believe we've seen, I don't think we've gone over a 10% increase any year in the last 10 years, which is amazing for health insurance costs. So I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of that fund. And we try to keep that as healthy as possible. We've been hit with some high costs, but through the Health and Wellness Committee, there's been some, and our consultants, we've made a lot of changes to try to stay above that curve and just be able to keep our money usage low for both our employees and ourselves. So,
Great.
any questions on the October? Oh, I guess Mr. Price asked that, not me.
So I gotta go back. Sorry, I'm flipping
Sorry.
back.
Item 38.
Can I get a motion to approve item 38, please? Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Nally,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Okay, so the 5-year forecast. We'll dive into that one a little bit deeper, and I guess switch to my notes on that. One of the things I really want to highlight on the 5-year forecast is we work with very conservative estimates on this. Try to project as conservatively as possible, but these are just estimates. I don't know what the state's going to do with the new budget cycle coming up. There's all kind of factors that play into this. If we have something large, a large expenditure pop up that we weren't even seeing on the horizon. So while this is a great tool, and I do think it's very, it's a good tool for districts to have, just be aware this is just a guess. A very good guess, very well educated guess, but a guess nonetheless. And I did not mean to rhyme like that.
All right, Dr. Seuss.
Okay. Let me look. I'm very happy with this forecast over the last couple of years. Prior to, I'd probably say about 2021, our forecast was not this pleasant to read. We were hitting much higher deficit spending, and our fund balances were nowhere near as attractive as this. Like I said, I was really conservative with projecting out revenues. And yet at the end of the 5-year forecast, we only had a $265,000 deficit spending. In the past, we've had negatives in the cash balance or in the fund balance. So I'm very happy with how this looks for us. But it does take quite a few things into assumption with the state budget and how our expenses are going to grow with inflation and that kind of circumstances. The forecast does not include back payments from the Nexus pipeline. Yes, we do know we're going to be receiving that, but didn't have the numbers, so I didn't even put it in there. So just be aware that that's also not included in here.
That's almost a good thing at some level.
Yeah.
You want to
Yeah.
count on guaranteed funds, not
Yeah.
who's going to litigate next.
Right. Whatever comes in, it's just gravy.
Right.
That's it. It's just gravy. Do you have any idea for the Nexus thing? And I forget when we were on the opposite end of it with AMP, how long does that entity have to, isn't there a time frame that they have to pay that money in arrears?
I really would like to say that I think they're anticipating one payment.
Okay.
But don't quote me on that because I'm not sure.
And I think part of it, like when we were having to repay AMP,
we had
like 3 options.
Yeah.
It could be a lump sum. It could be almost like 2 payments, or then more of a payment plan, but it wasn't like long and drawn out. But okay. I didn't know if they had even said anything about that, of how it was.
I'm reading the email real quick from the county auditor just to see if they had any idea. Yeah, they don't.
Okay. For those of you that weren't on the board, when we were on the opposite end and we were having to repay AMP because they went and changed that all on us and everybody had to pony up the money. Because it was money in arrears, you could pay the lump sum right away. Well, the problem was it was enough money that it was like, yeah, how do we take that out of a year? And it's this fiscal year. And I want to say
$6 million.
Yeah. It was like $6 million, but wasn't it like within the last 2 months of our fiscal year? Something like that?
Beliefs.
It came up. It felt like it came very quick.
Yeah, I mean, it was all of a sudden, where's that money coming from? We're at the end of our fiscal year. We've kind of spent our money for this year. Yeah. Thank you very much. And then there was like a 2-payment plan. And then there was like was it 4? Like 2 payments per year for 2 years or something like that. And so that's why I asked that question. There is a way, but hey, more power to them if they can do the lump sum.
Yeah.
But
We'll take it.
yeah, obviously if they have that much sitting there, they must be paying a little less over these years that
a little.
had some savings somewhere. But anyway, so sorry not to get off track on that. Just
Once I find out, I will update you guys and let you know if it ends up being over a couple of real estate collections or if it's going to be just on this next one in January. They are anticipating that we will see it in the January real estate collection. February.
so this fiscal year.
Yeah, this fiscal year we are anticipating seeing it.
Oh.
Because they are moving. I feel like if I speak about this, it's
No,
gonna
I
not
know.
happen.
Yeah, that's yeah,
Right?
yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just
More to come later.
yes. Also, I want to note that state funding is 31% of our revenue. We are at the end of the 2-year biannual budget. So we will see what happens with our funding come July of this year. We have seen larger increases in our state funding due to a couple different factors, with the fair school funding formula being phased in. We also saw an increase due to being fully having the CEP free lunch program in all of our buildings. That increased our state funding 1.2 million, but we anticipate that to go down in fiscal year 26 because the factor that the state uses to come up with that area of our funding, they're going to use a different factor. They're not going to base it on our free and reduced population, just because a lot of schools took that option to have the whole district being free and reduced since they upped them, or they lowered the percentage of students that had to qualify. So we did factor that into the forecast for fiscal year 26 and on, that they're probably going to use a different formula to figure that dollar amount out for us.
Where does like federal funding factor into this? You know, especially like in regards to special education or the special needs and people with disabilities.
It doesn't.
Okay.
The 5-year forecast is only on our general fund. Federal funds and other funds that we have, PI is not in here, food service isn't in here, the grant items aren't, none of that is in here. The self-insurance fund I spoke about, that's not included in this. These are only general fund expenditures that the forecast focuses on. So none of those grants factor into this at all.
Okay.
And then as we head over into the, also just, I mean, I'm said this enough, with interest income, we're projecting that revenue to go down over the years. Just due to that, those interest rates are probably going to continue to fall. So then if we look at our revenue overall, we project a little bit of an increase, but it's a modest increase for our revenue. If we move down into salaries, that takes into consideration our different negotiations that we've had for projected increases in wages. And then we also know that benefits are going to continue to rise. So I've also projected that to increase over the years as well. We've taken into consideration some of the curriculum purchases that will have to come out of general fund and some other purchases that the district has to make that are larger.
And those are included in here?
Those are
Okay.
included.
So in line with curriculum.
Because we've been able
Pacing
to
and all that.
plan
Yeah.
and work collaboratively, there's no surprises. So we can share that information with programming components. And then in the finance side, Megan can plan for that and keep us well afloat.
That's wonderful. It's wonderful.
I've also projected the expenses going up at a little bit quicker of a rate over the last couple of years due to the ESSER funding that we had is gone. We've spent it all. It's all accounted for. It's no longer going to come towards us. And that really did have a huge factor on our salaries and benefits. That's where a lot of that money was due to. That's what it fell within the grant verbiage for. Sorry, I gotta take a drink real quick.
But all that anticipated and planned well for that, we never depended solely on the ESSER dollars. And like Mr. Price said, it was gravy while we had it, and then we get back to where we were because we don't.
And I can tell you, I've being down at Capitol Conference, even in some of the sessions that I went to, that came up. It was, I knew there was some. It was kind of amazing to me how many districts expected that money and used it for something that there was no way they were going to be able to afford to keep.
Sustainability. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it's kind of a hot mess. And I mean, I'm so thankful that our leadership looked at it and said, it's gravy. What can we do with this? We're going to use it. We know it's going to end. What can we afford after that so that we don't lose all these services that we had great for 2 or 3 years, whatever that was, 4 years, whatever. And then all of a sudden it's all gone and now we're struggling.
Yeah.
It just sounds like there are some school districts that are in a world of hurt right now for services. So they don't feel like they're servicing their kids as well as what they did the past 3 years. Well, without that planning, which is great that, again, that falls into all of this. And it's like, yeah. So thank you to our administration for keeping up on that and having that thought. That was just mindful of all of our dollars and responsibility on that. So.
And then also increase purchase services, supplies, equipment, capital. And then also down in the transfers out, I built in there $3 million for this year, potentially if we have to help our food service out at all with the whole district being considered free. There's potential that the general fund might have to pitch in for that, which we took into consideration. Currently, our food service fund is doing well, but we only get reimbursement from the state for the actual kids that qualify for free and reduced. The reimbursements are still based on those numbers. So just in case we have to transfer some general fund dollars over to support that, I did factor that into the forecast.
Did we get decent responses back from families on that? Can you talk to it?
I'm going to defer to Denise on this.
Right.
We did have some family participation and return of the form. It is a very lengthy form, and it only counts for us if it is completely filled out. Remember that it also asks for sometimes some very specific information that families are challenged to share with us sometimes. And so there's still an opportunity for families if they would like to return that form or if they would need another one. We certainly can do better on our return. It's something that we could continue to ask for.
But what is that? How does that factor into that?
As Megan said, so within the CEP, and please jump back in here if we're going to tag team. Within the community eligibility program that the district participates in, it assumes for us that it allows us to consider every child as being at an economic level where we can feed all of our students free breakfast, free lunch for all of our students in all of our buildings. We only get reimbursed for those dollars for families who meet certain criteria. One way of which they can meet that criteria is by completing that form and submitting that information to us. So one thing that we continue to tell families is it may or may not directly, you taking the time to fill out that form and return it to us may or may not directly impact your student that lives in your house, but it may impact in a positive manner the students that are there are other students in the classroom and in the school building. With those dollars, one of the things that we are able to provide or that is a direct correlation to are some of those federal grants, Mr. Nally, that you mentioned, that do provide us dollars that we can assist individual students, whether that be with Title I, some additional literacy support, whether that be with some of our specific behavior needs that we heard earlier this evening from Mrs. French. So there's a lot of different reasons and ways that those dollars are used in the district. So again, it may not directly impact your child, but it certainly impacts the whole district. So we do want those forms returned, and we do want to continue to try to bridge that gap as best we can.
Or
So
way that they come up with that number for how many kids would qualify is through what's called direct cert, and that's done through the county.
Correct. So one way that that our families can qualify, thank you, is through the filling out of that form. Then there are other ways if they receive some additional services outside of the school district. And those services, I believe, would run specifically through the county offices and directly to our families in their homes. If any of those qualifying pieces are in place with those families, then that's that direct certification that puts them into this category that allows for those dollars to flow on their behalf.
So who does that research?
For the direct cert,
Yeah.
we are
State
notified.
of Ohio.
Yeah, that is information that comes to us.
Okay, perfect.
Mhm.
Once upon a time, like a year or so ago, we talked about having a person, I think we did for a hot second, have a person, like a family liaison to reach out. Does such a person still exist? And well, don't even answer that. If that person or that position or that responsibility could be delegated or assigned to someone to help with that outreach, that might be worth consideration.
Okay. I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. We will take a look at that. Wonderful.
The only other thing I do want to add to that is just my own little plug for my department. If families don't qualify through that direct cert, there are implications to fees, student fees. If you don't qualify through that direct cert, if you do fill out that form and you, the district decides you need to be labeled, I hate saying labeled, but
Identified.
thank you, as a free status, your school fees would be waived. So if that, is a situation that our families are in, I think we've tried to stress that in our communication out as well, that it does affect other things than just this free and reduced status and our federal grants. It also affects student fees, which I know families struggle paying with.
Yeah, because who knew band was going to cost so much? Just saying.
Yeah. We love to support our children doing all kinds of activities, but sometimes they add up pretty quick.
It's all worth it. It's all worth it. Just say that since I said that out loud, my intrusive thoughts escaped.
But that is good to know that I guess probably a lot of people think that form is just for food,
Right.
but it
That's
isn't.
a great point.
And it isn't
Yes.
just for your children, which is the most important thing, obviously. But if it brings in Title I stuff or
Tutors. and-
something like
yes.
that for everyone,
Yes.
it's just going to benefit my kid and everybody else's kid also. So that's good to know. I guess I never realized that it tied into more than just
Mhm.
lunch.
Yeah.
But
I know that was a big point we wanted to make sure we stressed these next couple of years so that when your child becomes a senior and you want your senior to walk, and you look at those student fees and you're like, well, our situation was not financially good at that time. Well, did you fill out the fee waiver form? Did you make those different connections? And then we don't want that to drop off because we can't go backwards. So really want to make sure that gets explained to parents now. And I think we've communicated that. I didn't see the flyer, but I believe something went out to that effect.
It did. So, but always an opportunity to rephrase those pieces too. And just remind our families that if the year has gotten started and they haven't filled out those forms, and they feel that is something that they could assist us with or benefits them and their families, then please make sure they come into their building principals and make sure that they get a copy of those forms. It could be very beneficial.
And I also just got a text message that I was correct. We are very sure as of right now that we are going to get one payment from Nexus in February. So with the next real estate collection, we will get that.
So there'll be a
payment.
huge increase percentage-wise on that line item in the
I'm
February
not going to say
financials.
that. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Can
More
we
to
just
come
go with
later.
that?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I shouldn't have said anything.
Yeah.
More to come later.
I think the more important thing is realizing we have at least one person that's watching.
I was just gonna say the same thing. Like, shout out to your staff. Who's
I was going to say, I might have some spies out there that watch and check on some things for me.
That
So
want you to
shout out
win. I
those
like it.
person. So if we look back at that forecast, those transfers out, I dwindled off towards the end. So like I said, overall, I feel like this is a really good forecast. I feel like it's conservative, minus any crazy unexpected things that happen, which we all know with the state of Ohio that could happen at any minute.
well, in any state in the union at this point.
Right.
so.
Yeah, exactly. So who knows what, this is just my best guess at this point in time.
Sure.
So are we back to the agenda?
Yeah.
Or did you have more on the
Nope.
more on?
I think I covered it.
All right, let me get back here. I just
I know.
hit something
Like I
there.
got to flip too. So just
And I hit something that I shouldn't have. So now I get to
Oops.
go all the way through this again. Sorry. Oh my God.
Policy land. You have to get through policy land.
I know. Yeah, the policy is like forever and a day.
Mhm.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve item 39, please?
So go ahead.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Lewis. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lehman. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Mr. Nally,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Okay, my last item on the agenda for tonight is an appropriation change for our United Way ACE mentoring. We get a donation from the United Way, and every year when we do appropriations, to cover all funds, we do 100% of what we've spent the last year. This year, we've found some other areas that we would like to spend the money with the United Way cash that we have available. So we are going to appropriate more cash this year than we have in the past. This is the United Way funds primarily get spent on, well, I don't want to say primarily, but they support the ACE mentoring program through the Downtown All Together event, supplies for different activities. Trying to look real quick at a report and see what all we also support our ACE mentors by the district requires background checks. And so this fund also helps offset that cost for those individuals. If there's some travel mileage that's needed, this money is also used for that.
So all very direct service to kids
Yes.
related items.
But I guess clarification, So those are additional dollars that we have to apply toward the ACE mentoring.
Mhm.
Okay. So those are not United Way dollars that have been given to us through the United Way giving program.
Can I try? They're not through the giving program. I think what you're thinking about when our staff has the opportunity to participate in our annual giving component.
Right.
These funds are direct correlation to those dollars throughout the entire county. I believe that within our district, we write a grant every year. Susan Fry does a great job as she heads up that ACE mentoring. So she writes a grant every year and requests dollars from United Way. And this is one of the projects that United Way supports financially within our entire county.
Right.
So we request those X number of dollars. We say how we're going to use them and how those correlate directly to students. And United Way has been very generous to support our ACE mentoring project.
So those dollars that we're looking at appropriating have come from the United Way.
Yes.
Correct.
That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
And they are going to be used towards awards and scholarships.
Mhm.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve item 40, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Nally. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Nally,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom. Yes. Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved. Moving on to board member communications. Don.
Just a couple quick things. As a number of us attended the OSBA Capital Conference, I just wanted to mention a couple of the sessions that I attended that I found different pieces of information I think that will be helpful. One was workforce education, board operation was another, school funding and taxation, and a session on the Fair School Funding program. So it was a variety of events, and I could say I really fell for the conference, and also Veterans Day program. Heidi Gallagher, I think, did a wonderful job with her committee pulling everything together. I was amazed at the number of veterans that attended, and you could tell that, they truly appreciated the recognition. And, as always, we thank them for their service. The band was great. All the pieces, the video was touching. But one of the things that really jumped out at me was the singer for the national anthem, Cameron Krieger, just did an excellent, just beautiful voice. And somebody, I think it was Jeff McNutt, shared with us prior to the meeting that she has signed on with the Air National Guard in Toledo. So, it's just great to see the veterans and great to see the support from our students. And that's all I have tonight. Oh, donation. I thought, the company that the old, can you
Argyle?
that it was just wonderful to see their donation of the 25 coats, and to help with the children, if they have needs during the winter months. all the donations are great, but that one just kind of jumped out at me. So, thank you.
Sarah?
I had quite a few opportunities to hang out with some students over the last couple weeks, and it has just filled my cup, so to speak. I had the opportunity to be a guest at the Louder Together event that was sponsored by the Link Interact Group and Family and Children First Council. Madam Superintendent was also a featured guest. Such a neat opportunity to just kind of sit at a round table with students in our community and hear what it is they like, what they feel they need, how they feel supported, where they feel the support kind of lacks. One thing about children that we all know is they are not scared to give their opinions and their thoughts.
No.
So we had some really neat conversations about, just some of their thoughts about why don't we do this and where is this, and we would really like to see this. And I was able to forward some of those things along to Mr. Price and Ms. Denise to see what we can do. And I emailed all of the kids back who participated and had like some of that live feedback. And it's really neat to be able to, when you're sitting with the kids and say, you know what, I don't know, but let me do some research, or at least pass it along to the appropriate people and see what happens. So it was really neat to be able to email them back and say, I did my due diligence, not saying that we're getting this or that, but at least the appropriate people know how you guys all think and feel and are aware. One of the things that they identified that came to my mind when we were going through item 30, Mrs. Hurt, when you pointed out that some of the teachers, the teachers supported the music programs that happened for Veterans Day. That was something that our students pointed out to me that is very meaningful to them when they are at a band concert or playing a sport or whatever extracurricular activity they're involved in. It's very meaningful to them to see their teachers there. They understood and expressed that teachers have lives too and families and things like that, but they just expressed that that's something that is meaningful to them. Look up in the stands or look out in the pack and see, teachers just showing up for them. So I thought that was noteworthy. Also had the chance to be a guest speaker at the Link Interact Club meeting. I'm very confident that those young adults could run our school board meeting because it runs their meeting.
It isn't saying a whole lot. I mean, I can use that at this table here. I mean, not to put anything on them, but
noted.
Just saying. At least for this person here, somebody could fill this chair pretty easy.
That's funny. It is a well-oiled machine. Shout out to all the students that are involved. It is an agenda and a process. They are very organized. Shout out to Susan Fry for, continuing to foster that kind of environment with those students. Along with Mr. Nally, I was able to attend the Veterans Day program. Amazing. So just to add to his comments, Mr. Calhoun, who was our band director, Mrs. Hamaker, who was our orchestra director, both of those groups of children, they are children, students. They would probably get upset if we called them children. They did an amazing job. What I always find fascinating is they play with little to no instruction or direction from a director. Mrs. Hamaker was sitting a couple seats over from me when her group of orchestra students were playing. So I just find that amazing. And I am pretty sure that Rylan Fox was the teen leadership student who organized and orchestrated that Veterans Day program. So she did a wonderful, wonderful job. Thank you to our veterans on staff who served. I'm glad that it was acknowledged formally by superintendent and the board. That's a nice thing that we do. And I guess the last thing is, I think somehow it was missed on our school calendar when Thanksgiving break is. It's not highlighted. I happened to see a couple of comments on social media last night asking when is Thanksgiving break. So if we could just remind the public right now that Thanksgiving break is starts
next week. Let's do it this way. Next week, we will be in session for school on Monday, November 25th and Tuesday, November 26th. There will be no school in session beginning on Wednesday, November 27th through we will rejoin school on Monday, December 2nd. So we will be in session on the 2nd, and we will not be in session on Wednesday, November 27th through the holiday Thanksgiving weekend.
Thank you. I would have said that wrong.
If it was not on the calendar, I could also do an alert just to make sure that all of our families have that information as well.
Just because I saw the public commenting on it, it might be worthwhile even right now if we can get a blast out. Yep, I think that would probably be helpful.
It doesn't have it listed.
Okay. We might have missed.
Yeah.
It does happen.
When I saw it, I just told my wife and daughters they're in school. So doesn't say you're off. So hey.
Yes, I will clarify that. Thank you for pointing that out. I did miss that then.
Thank you. That's all.
Okay. Laura?
I don't have as much as Sarah is. I'm gonna thank you, Abby, for bringing all that good info to us, and Mrs. French over there doing the same. And I know we thank the veterans for coming in here, and I know I've talked to Denise about this, and I don't know about anybody else. You always appreciate veterans, and I feel like the older you get, you probably get a little bit more appreciation and you understand a little bit deeper, but it's until you have somebody in your family that actually serves, and then you start to feel it from a different aspect. I think I mentioned before, my 19-year-old son, he's in the National Guards, and I just, I don't know. It's every time you go to those ceremonies, you guys were having a ceremony, and I'm sad that I had to miss it, but we were having a ceremony at where I work for our residents. We had 5 veterans out there that we were acknowledging, and I don't know, you enjoy the awards that are being given to, the people that are in front of you, but then you also remember your own son or your own daughter is, has served or is serving, and it gives you a totally different vision of everything that's going on, and it almost chokes you up because, my journey with my son's just beginning because he's only 19, and I can't imagine what the next years are going to bring to me and everything that he's going to go through, myself is going to go through, I can't imagine the journeys that they've been through. I hear about them. I hear all the stories about them. Obviously, you guys know what I do. We hear all the stories of the background of everything they've been through, but they all have a story. They all have a family that's been through it with them. And now I'm starting my journey. So again, yeah, when I see it, and I was thinking about it when I was, just the pride and the happiness you see in their face as they get their awards. And I think as they're getting their awards, it brings back everything that they went through. And, they're going to always remember everything they went through until they can't anymore. So I don't have much more to say, but I do. I really admire all of our veterans, people currently serving that used to serve. Thank you. It's nothing that I could do myself. I don't have enough guts to do that. I think it takes a lot of courage and again, thank you for everything you do. Everybody that works in our school system, in our community, I greatly appreciate it.
Lori?
Well, thank you everybody for the donations and all the volunteers and the teachers that give their time and their energy towards helping and donating, help the kids with the stuff. Thank you, Abby and Christine, for the presentation and information on what you do, and for the veterans for all their sacrifice that they've given, and their families have sacrificed a lot too. I know my brother, he was in the National Guard, and my nephew, he was in the Army, and my uncles, my cousin, I've got a lot of family members. So, and it's a big sacrifice, but it's worth every penny and every ounce of sacrifice for them to give it up. They're more than willing. And the retirements. See, Mr. Shell was retiring, so my kids had him as their guidance counselor. So, but yeah, so we just appreciate all of you, and we just thank you.
Thank you for our donations from families, from businesses. Our community supports our schools in so many different ways, and I think we have a great relationship with our community as a school district. So that's great to have that going on. I think to piggyback off of Capitol Conference, you get to interact with a lot of different people from all over the state sometimes, and we have a lot going on in our district that is pushing us forward in front of a lot of districts around the state. I mean, if we just want to look at the financial part, looking at the financial forecast, I guarantee you there's board members sitting around the state right now that are like, what's going on in the next 5 years? This is crazy. You know, just the programs that we have, what we offer our students, the services that we have, how we take care of our students. There's a lot of kids that don't get that. So I appreciate our district, and that goes back to our community too, that everything that we provide and how we're providing those services, I think is just great. Congratulations to the retirees. A lot of them have had a lot of years. You know, I started looking at that list. I always made fun of Mr. Gorbetz because he's been around since the age of time. Doc Hershey isn't too far behind. You know, I mean, we're going to have to kind of put those two guys together. They've seen a whole lot in their tenure working for a school district in education. So, Doc, you're kind of in that same category as Alex Gorbetz, whether you like it or not. So, winter sports are in full swing. Kids are working hard. Games, matches, meets are going to start coming up here real quick on the calendar. Let's get out and support our kids. They're putting in a lot of time and effort, above and beyond being a student. Student is first, but they're willing to put in that time to work at it. So let's go out and support them. So with that, there is no need for executive session, correct? Okay. Could I have a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Ms. Lehman,
Yes.
Mr. Nally,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes. Motion's approved. Meeting's adjourned.